either return filing or books of account or some data which we have presented to the government. In terms of real litigation, we have not yet started. As I mentioned, it is only 5% till now, which is the real litigation, which is the real crux of indirect tax. Talk, which is in interpreted specifically classification related issues, which earlier laws we are seeing it in multiple high courts and supreme courts. So let me tell you, it is just a beginning of the litigation time for GST. In terms of updates, compliance burden, we have been seeing it increasing day in and day out. Let me
Yes,
directly jump to this scheme of G. Yes, sir.
there seems some issue with your network. If you are connected to LAN, it would be great. Recently, there was some cracking in the noise. Okay, so can you repeat
Should
it?
I change my network, Sridhar bhai?
No, no, it's fine. It's fine. You can continue. Just
Okay,
last few lines were missed.
okay. I'll repeat last part of it. If I talk about the compliance burden, which we all have been seeing increasing, either it is IMS, either it is matching of GST or 2B data with notices, 16.4 notices, automated notices without application of mind. Lot of issues which are still to be covered, but government seems to be in the era where small issues pertaining to data reconciliations matching is being brought out by the department. Even talking about dual jurisdiction wherein center and state, as we are all aware, GST era is where there have been a dual administration. So both have been authorized to issue show cause notices where center and state both are coming up with their own points, own show cause notices, whether in same line, same point of contention or otherwise. So GST being this law, a new law, the real litigation is yet to start. We are into this era where only issues pertaining to numbers are being initiated. We are yet to see the real crux of GST. Let me directly jump to amnesty scheme. If I talk about specific to GST amnesty, first of its kind amnesty where government has come up with waiver of interest and penalty for particular set of financial years, making it the right scheme for the initial phase of GST, that is 3 years, and making it a perfect blend where the taxpayers or the business professionals which were expecting. Now, let me start by saying this onto GST amnesty scheme. First was brought out in the 53rd GST Council, where they tried to amend the CGST Act, saying we are adding a new section called 128A, wherein they mention we are bringing this new scheme so as to make sure that the litigation goes down, because we are seeing this as a part of process in day-to-day life, where for one matter or other we have been called to department, make them understand what is the issue, what are the contentions of the assessee, what are the position that we are adopting, and department has its own view corresponding to the same issue, giving rise to litigation wherein two views crossing each other and making it a dispute which can go on to any level. So the idea of this scheme, if I talk about objectives of this scheme, government had made it very clear we want to make sure that the litigation under GST goes down. And to make sure that litigation goes down, They brought out this scheme under the act by bringing in the new provision under the CGST Act, new section 128A, which was notified via Finance Act 2024 brought out in budget, and a new section has been brought out with effect from this section being notified, that is notification number 17 by 2024, which was issued on 1st of November 2024. So section has been brought down, section has been inserted. Now the real crux was the implementation. We are all expecting this amnesty to be all good, all friendly to the taxpayers, subject to fulfillment of certain condition. But it seems, by way of mentioning it to be reducement in the litigation, they have started a fresh new set of litigation under the GST in terms of disputes being rising day in and day out. Why I say so? We'll go through this full scheme at large. You will understand how this scheme is starting a new set of litigation, not actually reducing it, but making it again a set of dispute, two views being created, and again putting up into the manual form where decision or reference has been drawn to the GST administration is considered. So they brought out this section mentioning the criteria under which this scheme will be applicable, whom it will be applicable, the uh, conditions under which it will be applicable, the payment criteria, why this amnesty, what you have to do. But the real procedure or the prescription under the rules was missing. So, with effect from this 54th GST Council met, they inserted Rule 164 into the GST rules and notified it through notification number 20 by 2024, which was issued on 8th of October 2024, which also came in from 1st of November 2024 by it being notified. Now, this rule has that all mechanism, the prescription of procedure that has to be followed to be eligible for this amnesty, to get the waiver under this amnesty. If you want to get that benefit, what you have to do, what is the procedure, what is the mechanism that you have to follow, that is something which came out as a part of a rules and forms being notified. So 164 rules, along with the rules, the forms also notified how to apply, whom to apply, where it will fall, what are the procedures. That is something which was notified through this rule 164, which we are all talking about. Now, this section specifically mentioned there would be a date notified with effect from which this scheme payment criteria needs to be fulfilled, and an application needs to be filed with relevant judicial authority, under which, if you want to opt in for the scheme, because this is an optional scheme not applicable to everyone, wherever there have been litigations in terms of GST in respect of this first three financial years of it being implemented, if you want to avail, there has been a date notified until which you should make a payment of particular amount, and within a particular prescribed time limit you need to apply it in an application form. Now the date which have been notified has been put up in notification number 21 by 2024, which notified the date to be 31st of March 2025. Now, if I want to avail the benefit of the scheme, avail the benefit of waiver of interest and penalty, I have to make sure that I make the payment of tax amount which was demanded to me before 31st of March 2025. Now, the application was prescribed under the rule saying 3 months has to be the time limit from which the date is notified. So, date which I think so many of the tax professionals which gave me a call asked me, sir, whether the date which we have to adopt, the 3 months date for application, whether it would start from 1st of November 2024, because that is the date from which this section and rules have come into picture. That is 1st of November 2024, or it is the date from 31st of March 2025. This 3 months will start. If I read the bare provisions along with the notifications issued, the date notified is 31st of March 2025. So this period of 3 months should start from 31st of March. It will end at 30th June 2025. So if you want to really avail the benefit of the scheme, you have to apply in form by max to max 30th June 2025, subject to the condition of payment of tax by 31st of March 2025. Please hold all your questions till the end, because I am sure by end of this session, all your questions would be covered. So any question you have, please put up with yourself. By the end of the session, I think so your all questions should be sorted out, and there should be no question pending during this session which will be unanswered. Even though it is unanswered, I will take up at the end so as to make sure the flow does not get disturbed. So I was on to that part of application and payment criteria which have to be adopted for this scheme to be made applicable to taxpayer. It is from till 31st of March, the payment date, till 30th June 2025, the application needs to be filed. As Bharat sir rightly mentioned, these forms have been notified, but yet the practical application of implementation of these forms is not yet active onto GST portal. So if I talk about the date from 3 months also from 1st November, it will not be the case. We are very clear. It is till 30th June which we have to file the application, subject to some exceptions which we'll be discussing. But the timeline for this implementation, which the government has said will start from January 2025. I'm sure we are all busy into this season of annual returns GSTR 99C, but government is somewhere they want us to be busy all day. So as soon as we are over with GSTR 99C, we'll be starting the process for this amnesty where they are planning to bring up the forms active onto GST portal from January 2025. One another important perspective which came out from the GST portal, I'm sure you are all now heard of that, is hard locking of liability and ITC onto the GSTR 3B. Initially, the press release said it will be hard locking both liability and ITC. After that, various constraints came, representation, interpretation. They had to draw back the in ITC related specific issue and hard locking, which they have mentioned they will be doing in GSTR 3B, which comes out from GSTR 1 auto population, which they are planning to bring in from January 2025. That is also the same date wherein they have planned onto the GST portal. But yes, likely to be deferred, brought out into the budget specific restrictions, because these are all part of advisory. Now we are into some kind of law which is driven by portal, advisories, press releases, and not by actual statute or rules. Every day in and day out, we are seeing IMS, if I take just as an example, almost six advisories being brought out by government, nothing into the law about IMS, restrictions not in place for IMS, application, optional, mandatory, lot of things being discussed into the industry, but nothing in statute per se, even though we are followed by that specific advisory. So there is lot to be discussed here, but I will restrict myself to only amnesty now. Circular pursuant to this notification notifying the date issued circular number 238, which had some questions being answered by the government pursuant to some issues being raised by taxpayers or businessmen. So that circular also rounded to almost 12, 13 pages, answering a lot of questions, queries, some part of that, some not part of that clarified. We'll discuss in a further length of our discussion today. So introduction, if I talk about, this is something which is a base of this amnesty scheme. Now, if I talk about the applicability of the scheme, how this scheme is made applicable, to whom it is applicable, what are the criteria, conditions that I need to fulfill to make sure I am part of this amnesty, am I eligible for the amnesty or not. So first and very important condition is that the dispute in relation to GST should be pertaining to three financial years, that is 17-18, 18-19, and 19-20. So this three financial years, if my dispute is pertaining to, I am eligible for the scheme, subject to some other conditions which I need to fulfill. Now, whether it is show cause notice, order, appeal, what is which is should be there, we'll be discussing it. But a broader way, considering these three financial years. In terms of demands which are raised, which is at a first litigation level, the demands should be under section 73. We are now very clear under the GST law, where litigation starts with two sections, which is 73 and 74. Now brought out only one section, 74A, for financial year 24-25 onwards. However, for earlier financial year, guided by 73 and 74, 73 we are all sure, correct, that it is applicable in case where there is a short payment, short levy, collection, but erroneous refund, misstatement, suppression, but with no intention to fraud. Now, under section 74, the intention seems to be clear onto the part of fraud aspect is considered. Same short levy, misstatement, suppression, but in respect of fraud. We are all aware nowadays, whenever, because for 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, the time period under 73 is over. To make sure the litigation does not continue, this scheme has been made applicable for three financial years. But very important, now what we are seeing into this adjudication process under GST, the notices are being issued under section 74, alleging it to be a fraud, however not justifying or proving it how it is fraud, to make sure the time limits are over. But my recovery mechanism is not restricted under 74. For 17, 18, 74 period is also over. So all litigation with respect to 17, 18, the initiation of litigation is over. But for other financial years, 74 is still available. But to make sure, this scheme is only applicable where you have been demanded the tax, interest and penalty with respect to section 73. Now there is a mechanism under the law wherein a conversion of notice which was previously issued under section 74, but due to non-provement of fraud, can lead to conversion to section 73. Now that conversion of notices from 74 to 73 is because of some adjudication which has taken place, some court making it a view that it is not applicable and hence conversioning it to 73. Now that particular set of notices or orders are also specifically covered under the scheme. Only 74 notices or orders are not covered under the scheme. One specific exclusion which they have brought out is this scheme is not applicable in case where the recovery or demand is pertaining to erroneous refund. Now 73 also has that point where erroneous refund which are non-fraud are covered under the recovery mechanism of 73. But the scheme specifically excludes that the demands being created on account of that erroneous refund, the amnesty of that, the waiver of that interest penalty, the recovery mechanism will not be applicable if it is a case of a erroneous refund. Second and most important thing after the financial year, which I believe is this one, where I want to get into the scheme of this amnesty. I have to make sure that I pay the full amount of tax which is payable as per notice or statement or order, whichever is the stage of adjudication. Various questions, various thought processes comes into the mind where there have been multiple points, multiple scenarios, multiple financial years, the demand being created. If I want to be eligible for the scheme, what the section mentions is I have to pay the full tax amount. Whatever it might be, it should be as per the notice or statement or order, whichever you are contending to fall into this amnesty. So if I want to be eligible, I have to pay the full amount of tax. So we are all clear there are various components under which the recovery demand is made: tax, interest, penalty, interest under 50, wherein you are liable to pay an amount few years back, you are paying it now, so that interest cost burden increases, so that you have to pay it under 50. Penalty under various sets you have to pay for that wrongdoing. So out of that 3 4 connections, you have to make sure that the tax amount is demanded, which is demanded under the notice or order, is paid in full. So if I want to be eligible for waiver of interest and penalty, which is under this scheme, I have to make sure that the full amount of tax is paid. Very important point which I wanted to highlight and
बस
which I want everybody of
जाओ
you
जाओ बोल बोल
to make sure
तो
you
थोड़ा आते नहीं
point
पड़ी
out this
या
part is where there have been a pendency of departmental appeals, where the department has gone into appeals. Whatever is the outcome of that appellate tribunal or authority or court, whatever is the additional demand, say at first level it was 1 lakh, demand confirmed at higher level is 5 lakhs. If I want to be eligible for the scheme, firstly I have to pay it out the 1 lakh which is confirmed amount. Now additional amount of 4 lakhs which is confirmed by higher authority, that also needs to be paid up within a particular due date which have been prescribed to be eligible for the scheme. So today I applied for the scheme. I paid that 1 lakh rupees. In 2 years or 3 years down the line, the appeal got rejected, appeal got accepted, and the demand was confirmed, but at a higher level. That is say 5 lakhs. That 4 lakhs, which is the additional amount. If I want to avail the benefit of the scheme, I have to pay that additional amount also, subject to that tax component. If I want to get the waiver of interest and penalty, I have to pay the full tax amount which is pending right now, and departmental appeals which are already filed in respect of that particular subject to. If I am not paying that, the amnesty scheme itself is not applicable. Whatever eligibility which I have fulfilled, I have claimed the benefit, amnesty, everything would be considered null and void at that futuristic part. So one important point which needs to be noted is this. As I mentioned, the scheme applicability, they made it very clear. We want to make sure the litigation goes down, the objective of the scheme. So they have made a very clear point that wherever you have filed an appeal or writ petition in respect of this show cause notice or order, you have to withdraw that appeal or writ petition which is filed, which is pending at any of the forums, which you have to withdraw. You have to make an application, withdraw that appeal, and only after that withdrawal the scheme would be applicable. Yes, the procedure part will go on to a little later part of discussion. Now comes the crux of this amnesty. So what are the applicable pointers which I need to take care is this three or four criterias, the references to which this scheme would be applicable. So as I mentioned, 128A is the section which brings down this particular scheme, criteria being let down. So A, B, and C, we have bifurcated into this. A specifically talks about the stage where only show cause notice is issued, either under section 73, subsection 1 or subsection 3, but there has been no order which is passed under section 73(9). Now, as tax professionals, I believe we are all clear onto that aspects. There have been timelines under 73 and 74 until which the adjudication should close. Particular date of order, previous to that date of order, show cause notice being issued, all have been mentioned into the 73 and 74. But in first case, only show cause notice is issued, order is not passed. B is somewhere the order is passed under 73(9). However, it is pending before appellate authority under section 107, or it is pending with the revisional authority under section 108. So it is the next level of adjudication where show cause notice issued, order also passed, but pending at some other level of appellate or revisional authority. Next level is subsection C, wherein appellate authority has also passed or revisional authority has also passed. However, it is pending with the tribunal, which is yet to be activated, implemented at all levels. Still, they have made it very clear. Even if the order is passed for tribunal yet to be implemented practically, even though the notifications with respect to tribunal all have been out now, benches, national bench, what are the points they will be looking at, where the tribunal order is pending, appeal has been filed with the tribunal, it will be falling under this category C. And last and important is where we discussed where the show cause notice was issued under section 74. However, After adjudication or re-adjudication at particular level, the issue was de novo converted to 73 notice, where preliminary grounds seem to be 73 only. There have been instances where 74 notices were issued, multiple fronts, without being proving that how is this fraud being made applicable to. So broadly, these four categories which we have bifurcated, the act has bifurcated for making it clear the scheme applicability. Either of this I should be falling into, my case should be falling into so as to make sure whether I am eligible for the scheme or not. Now let me come to some of the important points which this scheme I've put up in a tabular form so as to make sure that it is easy to understand and our doubts also, because practically there would be a lot of other challenges apart from just the act or the rules being implemented, so that all cases or all concerns are covered. I put up in a tabular form making it each point a highlight. First case is where, because we made it very clear, erroneous refund, if there has been a demand or recovery provision under for erroneous refund, and other points also, which includes one of the points as erroneous refund, whether I'm entitled to the scheme. Answer is yes, you are entitled for the scheme subject to the condition. This is important, friends. I have to pay the full amount of tax, including the erroneous refund. However, for erroneous refund, I have to also pay the interest and penalty. The waiver would be for other points accepting the erroneous refund. So there are multiple points if I want to eligible for the scheme. One of the points being erroneous refund. For erroneous refund, tax along with interest penalty. For other points, only tax amount has to be paid for claiming the benefit under this amnesty. Talking about multiple financial years, one show cause notice or order being issued, which has partial coverage of the scheme, that is first 3 financial year, and partial coverage of other financial years. However, to my mind, this is still very disputable. Good number of high courts holding it that multiple show cause notice, one show cause notice for multiple financial years not being valid. Titan, Madras High Court, Veramox, there was other Karnataka High Court. Lot of cases being fought out in high courts where demands, because specific time limits available under 73 and 74, one for particular financial year. How can an adjudication process start for multiple financial year at a particular date? So this multiple financial years, the show cause is issued whether I am eligible for the scheme. Yes, you are eligible for the scheme. However, surprisingly, if I want to be eligible under this scheme for the periods not covered under the scheme, also I have to make sure in the same instance such as refund, I have to make sure the tax amount is paid along with interest and penalty. For the periods not covered under the scheme, for the periods covered under the scheme, I have to pay the tax amount fully. This is something which is strange, but we'll take it up at a later end. How can we get out of this, or what should be the probable next step which we should be adopting? We are now into this regime where 16 food had disturbed us all a lot. Notices, interpretational issues. Now we are seeing 16.4 being implemented from the supplier's angle. Very strange to my mind. But a position which the department is taking, new sections being in place, extending the time limits under 16.4, new sections 16.5 and 16.6, which extended the time limits for availing the credit, being implemented, notified. So whether this amnesty would be available for that 16.4 demands also, because that 16.4 demand could be part of my show cause notice or order along with the other issues. 16.4 is one of the issues on merit, but other issues also being part of the scheme. Yes, the entitlement is available, subject to that you have to reduce that amount of 16.4 from the amount of tax which is payable under that notice. Say 1 lakh is the payable amount of tax, 25,000 is pertaining to 16.4. I have to make sure that 75,000, 1 lakh minus 25,000, 75,000 I have to pay it off 16.4 as a separate adjudication which will be going forward. But this reducement is on account of 16.4, and after that reduction making sure that the full tax amount is paid. We already discussed the last part where the department has gone into the appeals. Whatever the additional tax amount which is payable has to be paid within a particular period of 3 months from the date of order. Otherwise, earlier issued order for favorable considering it to be part of applicable for amnesty would be considered to be null and void. Now, let me go into some more detail, because this applicability itself has lot of repercussions, lot of discussion, debates around the industry. Many questions coming out for 5 points. Out of five, 3 points are very legit, very much contending on merits. Actual errors being taken place. We are all sure this 7 years, because initial period of GST or any law being implemented, there would be hiccups, there would be errors, because we are all humans, we are all part of the same process which we go through. But how do we react to that position is something which we all should think upon. However, to be part of the applicability of the scheme, I cannot go point wise or merit basis. There is no amnesty which is available under this, which says for few points you avail the amnesty, for few you don't avail, you adjudicate, you go on to appeals or litigation higher. Because the objective of the scheme was very clear that they want to reduce the litigation. So they have made it very specifically partial waiver under section 128A is not available. Second question, even before this section being notified, discussions around after 53rd GST Council whether there is a notice or order which involves only an interest amount, whether I am eligible for the scheme. Circular specifically covered, wherein this 15th October circular clarified where I want to avail the benefit of the waiver and interest. In case of demands or show cause notice pertaining to only interest, it would not be available. However, if I talk about statute per se, there is no restriction, because actual payment of tax has happened at a particular period, then only the interest demand is made. Else, the demand or recovery provision had to have tax plus interest. However, at particular period, I cannot be put up in a worse position, because if I see this particular criteria, then I'm reminded back of that thought, जिसने टैक्स नहीं भरा is at a good position. बोले मैं एमनेस्टी की राह देखता हूँ, आई विल वेट फॉर द एमनेस्टी टू कम, कुछ ना कुछ तो मेरे को फायदा हो ही जाएगा. और जिसने पहले ही टैक्स भर दिया है, सिर्फ इंटरेस्ट नहीं भरा था और इंटरेस्ट के लिए शो कॉज नोटिस आया, then I am put up in a worse condition than a person not paying the amount itself. If I talk about specific restriction under 128A, there is no specific restriction. I am eligible for the scheme. 128A has been specifically inserted under the CGST Act. Whether IGST and compensation says the demands pertaining to that, whether it would be applicable, answer is yes. We refer to the provisions under IGST. They say all the provisions pertaining to CGST Act are applicable to us also. So IGST takes it back from CGST, saying the same sections particulars are available for not only CGST, IGST, but also IGST and compensation cess. Next question would be whether I have filed an SLP before the Supreme Court. Whether I am eligible for the scheme, answer is yes, sir. You are eligible for the scheme, subject to condition that you withdraw that SLP which you have filed in the Supreme Court. If I am sure of this scheme being applicable, I should withdraw that SLP and make it part of this amnesty, take the benefit, and taxpayers can avail that as a part of procedure. Talking about transitional credits which were converted from earlier regime to GST regime, whether the same demand notice is pertaining to that transitional credit section 141 and 142, whether I am eligible for the scheme for this input tax credit or any issues pertaining to that transitional credit, answer is yes. Subject to that credit ledger has been credited with the same transitional credit which you are eligible under the scheme. If it is pertaining to that, then there is no restriction under the law and I am covered by the scheme. Important question which came out also into the circular, whether I am a person who is importing the goods and I am liable to pay the IGST on that import, whether the scheme would be applicable because of the dispute being whether it is under the Customs Act or GST Act. Scheme clarifying it by way of circular, no. However, to my mind, that also will be falling part of this amnesty. You cannot say it is a levy under the Customs Act. This amnesty is under GST. To my mind, that is a wrong interpretation or intent of the law. In one of the important cases of sestet, it has very clearly made in case of Mayur Uniquoters, where it cleared out that IGST levy which comes out is a part of GST Act only and not Customs Act. GST Act draws a reference from Customs Act. The applicability of the IGST comes from the GST Act only. Now, I will not waste my time here because we are all clear now. What is the relief which is guarded to us is interest. The waiver is with respect to interest or penalty, subject to that condition that full tax amount is paid. Section 73 notice orders and 3 financial years. This is important. All related proceedings, if I am made eligible under the scheme, would be deemed to be concluded and there would be no fresh adjudication for the scheme pertaining to this particular financial years, this criteria is being satisfied. Now, this is interesting, which I also mentioned earlier. मैंने पे कर दिया वो मेरी गलती थी. Say in 2021, I received a show cause notice for 1718 saying you pay. The recovery was initiated against me saying this is something which you have to pay it for this 2-3 years interest and penalty. I paid it off. The scheme specifically mentions that there would be no refund which will be allowed to you. Now, my point will start from now. If I talk about the earlier regimes, there is one important, very important judgment of Mofatlal Industries, 1996 Supreme Court judgment, guiding this mechanism of refund. I'll request everybody to go through that, whoever are into refund practices. Very important judgment. And very good analysis being made by Supreme Court in that judgment, which is a 8 is to 1 judgment. The refund mechanism, how should it operate under indirect tax? Whether I should be held in a worse position than the person who are belatedly paying it or not paying it at that front. But as far as the scheme is considered, the section does not specifically cover this and has been put out of the amnesty. So there are, now let me go to a little bit procedural part where there have been two forms being notified, SPL 01 and SPL 02. We referred uh, three clauses A, B, C. For clause A, SPL 01 is applicable. You have to fill in this form SPL 01. For clauses B and C, I have to fill form SPL 02. So this forms, as I told you, the all the forms which have been notified, almost 8-10 forms being notified. As I mentioned you earlier, it is a fresh start of litigation, not an end. As we go to this procedure, we will understand how it is a fresh start, how it is a renewal of litigation which is going to start. But the first step for eligibility of this scheme, I have to fill in a form called SPL 01 or SPL 02 based on my criteria being fulfilled. Say if there have been multiple show cause notice issued under and I want to fall into the amnesty for all of that demands or recoveries, I have to file a separate application for each of such show cause notice or order. I cannot merge it and file a single application. So that point, please make sure for each notice or order or statement, I have to file a separate application under the relevant form. Now, as we mentioned, the tax amount needs to be paid. Now, the next question will be, how do I pay that tax amount? What is the procedure that I need to fulfill? So, bifurcating into 1 and 2, the forms are now clear. For SPL 01, I have to pay it through DRC 03, whatever is the tax amount which is being demanded. And I have to submit the same payment proof while filing the application. So, first chronology would be payment of tax. Once I showcase that payment of tax, only then I am liable to apply or eligible to apply for the amnesty scheme, that is SPL 01. So before application form, I have to pay it through DRC 03, attach as a document to that application. For SPL 02, there would be a different procedure wherein they have brought out saying you have to pay it for that appeal cases and futuristic but the orders being issued, you have to pay it through electronic liability ledger being created and adjusted, wide debit entry being posted to that liability ledger for the payment. DRC 03A coming into picture, earlier circular, same procedure being brought out here, circular 224, where they provided the same issue where this debit, credit of liability, debit of payment, so as to make sure that demand, because this is an online procedure which is going to be there, so as to make sure that trail is there under the GST portal. The same procedure prescribed under circular 224 would be applicable. Now, in cases where I have already paid the amount with DRC 03, an application will be need to be made under DRC 03A, which they brought out under the rule 142. It has to be filed before this application being applied for the amnesty, that is SPL 02. So DRC 03A needs to be filed by respective set of people where payment was already made in DRC 03. Now, what would be considered as a date of payment? It will still remain DRC 03. Only adjustment takes place at DRC 03A. It will not reciprocate the date of DRC 03A. The payment date would be considered to be DRC 03 only. Now, there have been issues onto payment as well. Say, I have paid the tax before this section being implemented, whether that can be considered to be a payment against this amnesty, and for other points I am eligible for waiver of interest and penalty. Answer is yes. Tax which is already paid before the scheme being implemented or section being notified, I would be considered to be eligible under 128A, and same shall be available for the benefit of taxpayers. However, there is an exception to this. Wherever there have been recoveries in terms of a specialized provisions under the Act not being 73, the same shall not be adjusted against this payment. A show cause notice issued under 73, a separate adjudication has been done, and the liability of payment of tax has been made against that. Only in that cases I am eligible for amnesty. Specific no restriction onto the utilization of credit, whether I have to pay it through cash or credit with respect to demands created under this. No restriction, ITC can also be utilized for creating as a payment in considered. Now for application, let me go through little procedural part so as to make sure we are not put up behind onto this documentation part, because department nowadays for small issues also creates a ruckus and rejects your long due amnesty, long due benefit available just for case of small issues. So this is very important, where SPL 01 or SPL 02 has to be with particular documents. So what are the documents under SPL 01? Two important documents: the notice or statement which have been issued, I have to attach that, along with the payment of tax, the proof of payment which I have paid to be eligible under the scheme. Under clauses B and C of section 128A, the order copy needs to be uploaded. Along with that, the payment which have been made, the adjustment of that payment against the liability via form DRC 03A has to be filed while making the application form. In both the cases, wherever you have filed either writ petition in any of the high courts, you have to make an application for withdrawal of that writ petition. At the moment, submit only that application that you have applied for withdrawal, and that application needs to be submitted while filling this form. Order would be passed by that high court accepting your withdrawal. The said order needs to be filed within 1 month from that order being passed to the adjudicating authority who is guiding your amnesty adjudication. So application for withdrawal needs to be submitted at the first stage only. However, that withdrawal, the order being passed of successful application withdrawal, writ petition withdrawal, will need to be filed within 1 month. Now, this table will clear all your doubts, all the forms, the what are the amount that is to be paid, within what time I have to pay, what is the time limit under which I have to make the payment to make sure that I am eligible for the scheme. So if I talk about specific SPL 01 or 128A1 subclause A, full tax amount to be paid, no dispute onto that. The date of payment should be before 31st of March 2025 to be eligible. Within 3 months, that is what we clarified. The date notified is 31st 31st of March. So the application should be filed on or before 30th of June 2025. This would be starting from January 2025. The implementation would started from January 2025. Let me be very precise. Till 30th of June, subject to some other dates also going forward we'll be discussing, but for this A case, subclause A, it is 30th of June. For B and C, wherein SPL 02 needs to be filed, same thing, full tax amount to be paid within 31st of March 2025, 3 months from the date notified, which is 30th of June. In case where there have been re-adjudication of your earlier show cause notice or order, considering it to be a notice or order under 73, conversion of 74 to 73, I have to pay the full tax amount. Now this is important, friends. This is something which is a dispute among tax professionals, whether the payment of that conversion also needs to be made within that 31st of March. Answer to that is no, sir. Because at that level, I was not clear whether it is going to be re-adjudicated under 73. So the time limit for payment would start from 6 months from the date of that re-adjudication order. The payment criteria would start along with the application time limit, which is also 6 months under the Act, both having the same duration, that is six months from the date of redetermination. Again, a question will come whether the application need to have that payment proof, or application I make it and after that I make a payment. Is it valid for this particular serial number C? Answer to my mind, the intention of the government is very clear. The payment has to be first, then only application has to be there. So intention seems to be payment needs to be proved along with application. In terms of erroneous refund or other reasons where there have been not only one point but multiple points, we already discussed this. I have to pay the full tax amount for all points. For erroneous refund or other financial years or other things, I have to pay the interest and penalty also to be eligible. The due date for the same would be also 31st of March 2025. In terms of erroneous refund, the interest and penalty also needs to be paid within 3 months from the date of issuance of order, accepting the application under 164. Application would remain the same, which is 30th of June 2025, because it is from the date notified, which is the notified date is 31st of March. In terms of multiple financial years, multiple periods covered under a show cause notice or issue, the payment of tax needs to be made for all financial years. For other financial years not covered under the scheme, interest and penalty also needs to be paid. Date remains the same as earlier, 31st of March, 30th of June for the application. Let me go to next part where one of the issues involved is 16.4. I have to reduce the demand created with respect to 16.4 because new sections being put up as a part of adjudication 16.5, 16.6. Reduction of that amount out of 125 pertaining to 16.4, 75 rupees I need to pay it before 31st of March, and before 30th of June I need to apply for the scheme. Now, this is something which is interesting where an appeal is filed under section 107, which is a departmental appeal. It is not by SIC, it is a departmental appeal which has been filed, or department has filed with the GST tribunal or High Court or Supreme Court under various sections. I have to make sure that the tax payment which was already demanded, I have to pay it off. However, for the additional demand, if any created at higher level, I need to pay it off within 3 months from the date of that order. Application needs to be filed at this moment only, which is 30th of June 2025, if I want to contend that I am eligible for the scheme. So this was about little bit about the payment issues, due date for application. Now let me come to who will be adjudicating this application, to whom the adjudication of this application will go on to. So SPL 01, which is under clause A, the proper officer would be the proper officer who is notified to issue the order under section 73, reading it with circular 3 by 3 2017. Proper officer for adjudication is the superintendent of central tax or state tax. In terms of the orders being passed under 73, condition would be restricted to that monetary limits which have been designed, that above where it is less than 2 crores, the orders needs to be passed by assistant or deputy commissioner. In case of demand more than 2 crores, it has to be by additional or joint commissioners. In terms of SPL 02, which is covered B and C, proper officer is a proper officer which are referred in section 79, which are proper officer to recover the amount. The same is notified by this circular 3 by 3 2017 to be assistant commissioner or deputy commissioners. So that same circular being implemented, the adjudication, the proper officer remaining your that specific superintendent or assistant or joint commissioners. Now let me come to procedure. SPL 1 to we all are clear now. This is the first step towards application. Now how will this adjudication go? Now you will understand how it is not an end to an adjudication. However, it will be a starting of the adjudication. All these cases will highlight that point where the issue is not closed, issue is started now. If the proper officer is satisfied, all good, all okay, he will issue an order under SPL 05 form, which is notified, accepting your application, saying you are rightful for the amnesty, and hence I am accepting your application, and the proceedings will be deemed to be concluded under 128A, which is an amnesty scheme. This is all good. This is all okay. Now starts the adjudication, real adjudication. The proper officer is not satisfied. What the scheme says, he will issue a notice for limiting the litigation. They are saying, I will issue a notice in form SPL 03 within 3 months from the date of receipt of application. And after that notice being issued, you will be given an opportunity to file a reply in form SPL 04 within a period of 1 month, and an opportunity also being granted to you in respect of the said application in form SPL 03, the contentions being raised, reply being furnished in SPL 04. Now the next step, so see, this is a chronology which is being adopted. It is not an end. SPL 01, 2 filed, SPL 3, 4, 5 started, SPL now say, now this is interesting. See, proper officer is satisfied. I have replied in SPL 04 is satisfied, issue an order under SPL 05. If it is not satisfied, he will issue an order in 07, SPL 07, rejecting my application. Now, this is all which is a time consuming process. All will take its own time, subject to the time limits prescribed under the. So he's not satisfied. Even after giving me an opportunity, he's saying, no, no, you are not eligible for the scheme. So I am rejecting your application. Now, what are the time limits that what we discussed SPL 05 or 7, when I need to, the officer needs to pass, if there is no show cause at the first end, if there is no show cause 3 months from the date of application, No contentions, proper officer satisfied, issue the order within 3 months from the date of application. If the show cause notice is issued 3 months from the date of reply, the date of reply is 1 month, or within 4 months from the date of notice if no reply. If I'm not replying, both are the same date, 3 plus 1 or total 4 months. So within 4 months, I need to close down this procedure. Now, in this case, what it says specifically, wherever I have applied for withdrawal of writ or appeal and actual withdrawal, that time limit between that, the application for withdrawal and actual withdrawal will be excluded for the period of considering this time limits. Say, for example, application is 1/4/2024, 25. Order of withdrawal comes on 1/5/2025. The date of submission of withdrawal order is 15/5. The time limit that start from 16/5/2025. So 1.5 months, that period will stop because the application was of withdrawal was made. However, the order of withdrawal was not received. If the order is not passed within this time limit framed by under the act, it will be deemed to be concluded. There would be no proceedings against you which will be considered, and it will be deemed to be approved, and you are good to go ahead without any order being passed within the time limits and hence concluded. Now, that was in middle about the time limits. Now again come to our earlier part where SPL 07 order is passed saying rejecting my application. What do I have the remedy? Appeal. I am not filing an appeal under the scheme. Now, I missed to point out one important fact here. Wherever there have been in reference to that appeal being made part of it, order being passed and appeal also filed against that, I am withdrawing that appeal for the purpose of application of this scheme. What this scheme suggests is a good point for taxpayers. What it suggests is, even though in respect of that appeals which was originally withdrawn, now this order which is against me saying I am not eligible for the scheme, the original appeal which was filed and later withdrawn is going to be restored. So my point would be again coming down to the square zero. Even though I am applying under the scheme, taking a chance, the application gets rejected, even though I'm secured at that appellate level. I'm not disregarded out of the full litigation. Litigation would continue because there is a restoration function of that original. Now, another part is where I'm going for appeal under this SPL 07 only. Now, see, this is what I was talking about. We are already 3 stages of litigation only under the applicability of the scheme. What it suggests is you file an appeal under against form SPL 07 saying that my application was wrongly rejected under SPL 07. So authority felt no, it is right. The application was required to be accepted. They will issue an order under SPL 06 saying your application is accepted, and the proceedings under the act under 128 would be deemed to be concluded. However, in terms where the department feels no, it was rightly, the appellate authority feels it was rightly rejected, my original appeal which was withdrawn because of this, if any, will be restored subject to that condition that in form SPL 08, a new form, I have to file that I will not be filing an appeal for SPL 07 within a period of 3 months. I will not be filing any appeal against this form where my order of amnesty was rejected. Now, important question which will come up now is where the declaration is not submitted, this undertaking which we are all discussing, whether my original appeal will not be restored in this scenarios, or rejection order which is issued under SPL 07 will be considered to be a final order, because there is a specific same time limit under 107 is made applicable, that is 3 months with 1 month of extended condonation period. So if I want to go against in appeal, I have to file with the same time limits under 107. In some scenarios where the payment or the waiver payment of tax has happened, however, the application, although approved under SPL 05, will be considered to be void. Two cases specific where we discussed departmental appeals have to pay it off within 3 months from the date, whatever is the additional amount that is required to be paid. In case of other pointers where erroneous refund or pertaining to period not covered, within 3 months from that order being passed, I have to pay it off. If I'm not paying it off for the points which are not covered, my original accepted application would be considered to be null and void. It will not be considered to be a rightful amnesty approval, and the original order which was passed under SPL 05 will be considered to be void. In terms of orders being passed under where the show cause notices were issued, whether uh, along with the order under SPL 05, wherein a favorable application approval is processed, whether a similar order under DRC 07 is required, because we are now all clear DRC 01 is issued for show cause notice, DRC 6 my goes the reply, DRC 7 is where the order is being passed, whether it will be required a separate order, the provision says not required. This SPL 05 confirms the demand drop in terms of interest and penalty subject to that tax amount being paid. In case of SPL 02, where the payment mechanism is something different via electronic liability ledger, where an application under SPL 02 is accepted and order is passed under SPL 05, the liability which has been created under the liability ledger will be modified accordingly, and it will be considered to be uh, finished. There is no further liability which is required to be paid. Now, let me come to summary of all of these forms which are issued. SPL 01, summarizing all of the procedure prescribed. 73, notice is issued, order not passed. Due date is within 3 months from 1st of April, that is 30th of June, and it has to be filed by the taxpayer himself. SPL 02, in cases where order is being passed by adjudicating authority pending with the appellate authority, or pending with the rectification revisional authority, or pending with the tribunal, or re-adjudication of the orders from 74 to 73, same time limit 3 months, form different SPL 02. SPL 03, a notice being issued in this form where adjudication starts with respect to SPL 03. 3 months from the date of application, it has to be done. The due date is, even if a show cause notice is to be issued, 3 months from the date of application needs to be made. SPL 04, that is the reply form to that SPL 03, 1 month time limit, similar to our other notices, 1 month time limit has been provided. SPL 05 is the acceptance order. If there is no show cause notice issued, it should be within 3 months from the date of application. If the show cause notice is issued, it should be from 3 months from the date of reply, or 4 months if the no reply is received by the department. SPL 06 is acceptance of the order by appellate authority. It is not at first level, it is at second level which is going, or which is being passed. However, in case where there is a rejection order, In terms of that, it should be within 3 months from the reply or 4 months. The time limits for the department is very clear, 3 months or 4 months, as the case may be from the date of that notice. SPL 08 is where the undertaking is prescribed, where I want to go into the original appeal. I will not be filing an appeal against this rejection order under SPL 07, and undertaking needs to be filed under SPL 08. Now, let me come to some of the issues or pending things which are yet to be clarified. We had analyzed this detailed procedure in terms of this amnesty. We as our firm had came out with a detailed FAQs in this regard, almost 60 FAQs being covered, and a PDF is freely available. You can mail with respect to this. I will definitely share it to you. This detailed 60 FAQs where most of your practical cases would be covered. I'll be dropping down my email at the end so as to make sure you get that PDF free of cost. That PDF had some part of what we are discussing right now, but if you want to read out fully, you can email it to me. I will share it to the team and also to the respective person. Now, what are the issues which are covered under the scheme? We saw what are the procedure, mechanism, applicability criteria, eligibility, fulfillment, non-fulfillment, everything. However, there are some cases which are still not answered, still not satisfied. Say, for example, I'm taking particular cases, practical cases, which we have seen in our day-to-day life. This order, which we are referring to, which is creating a demand under 73, is passed on 31st of August 2024. Now, these forms are being placed in January 2025, before which my time limit to apply for appeal gets over. Now, what I need to do for that? If I read it from the perspective of taxpayer or from the departmental perspective, if I read it, the interpretation comes to say that where the appeal time limit is already over, I have not filed an appeal, the period is expired, I will not be eligible for this. However, to my mind, that is not the case. Even though period for appeal gets expired, better position to avoid dispute, it is right to file an appeal and later withdraw the appeal, because anyway you are going to pay pre-deposit also onto the tax amount under the scheme. Also, if you want to fall onto, you have to pay the full tax amount. So probably best solution could be not going into litigation, file an appeal, withdraw whenever you want to go for this amnesty from January 2025, wherever you make a decision. The added advantage would be, because appeal gets restored in case of rejection, even in case of rejection of my application, earlier appeal which is filed, I can still fight onto that litigation saying this appeal is going to be restored, and I would litigate that into various adjudication stages. However, in terms of best possible would be this, but possible interpretation could be, even in case where appeal time limit is expired, it is not debarring you from going into this amnesty scheme. In case where there have been bunching of show cause notices, 5 financial years in one show cause notice, we are saying in audit cases, particularly where audit has happened for 5 financial years and a combined show cause notice or order is being passed, no specific financial year covered. As I mentioned earlier, also there have been case laws where this has been challenged and favorable decisions also being passed. However, for each order or notice, I have to file a separate application. If there is only one notice or order, I have to file it only one application. The important conditions would be, these are all procedures which have been mentioned either as a part of circular or rules or of form which are notified under 164. we can contend that there is no specific restriction which has been mentioned under the statute which is making me file a separate application for each of the financial years. The bunching of that each show cause notice or order would be not appropriate, will be not rightful. There have been no clarity onto this aspect of section 161 which talks about rectification applications, because there is a dedicated timeline which have been made part of it, wherein application needs to be made and order has also to be passed within a particular time limit. However, if that time limit is not getting over within this application criteria, no specific extension being provided under the law, it is advisable to follow up with the proper officer against in which that application is pending for that rectification, because the payment criteria is very stringent, because before that rectification getting finalized, my final payable amount is not ascertained, and hence there could be scenarios where order is passed for 10 lakhs but after rectification the tax amount which is only payable is 1 lakh. So if I get that cleared at this stage that only 1 lakh is the tax amount, the adjudication is available only till 31st March, because that is the date when max to max I have to pay the tax amount for. If I talk about re-adjudication or remanding back of the matter from or few other levels, higher level forums, where there is a dedicated timeline under 75(3) where you have to pass it within 2 years from the court order or the order remanding back that matter. If that is not getting over within this period, better to write a written letter to them saying, please, sir, close it off. So whatever is the reducement of amount that takes place, you can get benefit out of that, and a position can be adopted where payment of tax happens before 31st of March and application goes by 30th of June 2025. Now, this question is something which I get repeatedly in terms where my application, I have made an application under SPL 01, SPL 02. I have paid the full amount because for application, prior to application, I have to pay the full amount of tax. It is not adjudicated. Huh? Please make this. It is not an adjudication. It is application that I am accepting my liability for fulfillment of this amnesty. This application, whether rejected or approved, it is not on merits, sir. Whether what is the issue, it is 2A, 3B, it is 16.4, it is 17.5 restricted credit, it is 1 versus 3B versus 9, output liability, invert reconciliations. No, sir. It is not on merits. It is purely based on the eligibility criteria mentioned under the Act, that is 128A. Even though accepting that position where I do not file an appeal in SPL 07, my original appeal, if there was an order passed and I had filed an appeal, withdrawal of that appeal was filed, I have that possibility that my restoration of appeal will take care. However, in case of appeal, only 10% needs to be paid as a pre-deposit. However, in my case, for fulfilling the conditions under amnesty, I had to pay the full amount of tax. So whether I can get the refund of that full amount of tax is something which is going to be made a part of this particular amnesty. The refund possibility is something which we all should look at, and from the broader perspective, even could be part of the adjudication. Wherever, in case where there have been demands being dropped, however, against that demand being dropped, department is going against us by filing an appeal. We mentioned it is a part of something provision saying it to be additional amount which is going to be paid. I have to pay it off at a futuristic part if it comes against me. That is a risk which I am carrying. However, I can still litigate that demand being confirmed at higher level, going at tribunal or high court or supreme court against that acceptance of demand against us, the departmental appeal which has been ordered. I can check onto the aspect, but yes, this is something which needs to be well taken care of. Last and very important point which I wanted to discuss in terms where the demand of interest is in respect of delay of payment of GST, whether this form or this amnesty would be available or not. Circular is saying this waiver is not applicable in case where this interest is pertaining to delayed filing of return or delayed reporting directly recoverable under section 7512, which is a specific recovery mechanism because it is a self-assessed tax. So whatever I am reporting to the government is presumed to be correct. So any recovery which is instituted under 7512, the recovery mechanisms, the waiver would not be applicable. However, the section 128, which is a bare provision, starts with a non-obstant clause which says nothing, notwithstanding anything contained elsewhere in the act. So 7512 is being overridden by 128A. Even in case where the tax amount is already paid, only interest amount demand is created where the officer has already appropriated my tax amount earlier. It can be adjudicated saying that the chance can be taken saying tax was also demanded, which was further paid in earlier mechanism. Now is the case where there is an only an interest component which is being left pending and that is being demanded from us. I cannot be put up at a worst condition that earlier part. That is, various high courts have held in various cases where this is something of a very common phenomena where it should not be adopted. So I think so. I have broadly covered all the issues that were possible under this amnesty scheme, the procedure, the mechanism, and we are also nearing to time 7:20 already. And before I hand it over to President Sir and the team, one small point which I want to put up is there is a new book which has been released by Tax Sutra in relation to GST amnesty written by our partners. If required, you can order it from Tax Sutra. This is a amnesty specific book covering all the possible criterias, all the possible situations where your case would be falling or not. Probably the broad coverage of all that we discussed today, along with other possible criterias, you can look upon to of by ordering it from Tax Sutra team. I thank all the team members at ITBA and other organizations for giving me this wonderful opportunity to interact with all the fellow professionals. I hope I am able to clarify some of your doubts or issues pertaining to this amnesty. If there are anything specific doubts which are still left open, I am available for answering those questions. And I thank Sridhar Bhai and all the team at ITBA for giving me this wonderful opportunity, along with all the participants for staying it back till the end.
Thank you, Yash. Uh, Guys, please share your feedback in the webinar chat box. And there are a few questions. If so, I will just read the questions. Yes, for you, whether if it is covered, we can just go with it, or
Yes,
else if further clarification is required, uh, we can always discuss about. There is some
yes.
Mr. Vijay Kumar, who is MSAC SGST from Tamil Nadu. Sir, welcome to this webinar. Uh,
Welcome,
in
sir.
the question and answer section, there is a question that interest payable on ITC availed for delay in payment to vendors beyond 180 days will be covered under 73 or 74. If the department tries to apply section 74, any judgment against the same? This is question number one. And the second question in the same is, if department raise only demand for interest under section 73, can we apply for amnesty under section 128A for the interest for FY 18-19 and 19-20?
I think so. I have covered both the questions which have been raised. First, in respect where the interest and penalty positions have been inculcated under the amnesty scheme. I am very clear onto that aspect where the tax amount is already paid. Only demand pertaining to interest with respect to amnesty circular says otherwise. However, provisions has no restriction per se where under 73 if there is a specific restriction or not. I think so a good chance to take the amnesty, no restrictions to my mind.
Okay. There is another question in Q&A box, whether we are eligible to claim benefit of amnesty if DRC 7 order contains tax plus interest plus penalty. However, the whole tax amount has already been paid as per DRC 01A prior to issuance of DRC 7 order. Appellate authority is saying scheme is not available if tax amount is removed from order under appeal.
So what I can understand, I will just try to reinitiate here is where I am eligible for the scheme where a 7 order has been passed with all the three components. However, it has been already been paid as a part of intimation before the show cause notice, which is prior to DRC 07. As I mentioned, interest and penalty or refund would be little adjudicated and disputable, where refund possibility could be analyzed. However, department will contain that it is not available where you have already paid before that disputation of being raised. However, wherever the tax amount is already paid, it would be, to my mind, the amnesty should be available and refund possibility can also be looked at.
So, I'm just asking an out of box question if amnesty is available to me. And this is something unique where you have to pay and then ask for the amnesty. And in this case, I think there is no payment required. So, what is the option available with someone if the department do not give the amnesty, which is, in our opinion, is available to that person?
Sir, in respect of that case where application, because this is a separate adjudication which is going to start, if putting it as a part of trial and error position where the department may contend the amnesty is not available, however, a clear understanding and the provisions of the law backing various high court judgments where a position which is worse than what I have been my other colleagues or departmental persons otherwise have been taking up, how can I be at a worst condition? That is something which we can take, but yes, it will go a long way of litigation. It is not something which will be there at the first end which will be available.
Okay. Uh, so the follow-up question, I think it's been covered. If tax and interest paid after SCN, but penalty benefit under section 120, I think it's covered now. There's another question. We take last two questions. Whether officer can verify ITC match mismatch while allowing the amnesty for 16 subsection 4.
So, sir, as I mentioned, with respect to this amnesty for waiver of interest and penalty, the amount of 16.4 needs to be reduced. Now, whether that 16.4 amount which is reduced is rightful or not, a separate adjudication process have been already notified. So, what amount you have reduced, a separate adjudication definitely would happen, but under other provisions, not under 128A.
There is a question. Is there any provision under this notification where DRC 7 is already issued and it is erroneous? Can the proper officer rectify such order through the time limit of 3 months of filing the rectification is already lapsed?
So I think so provisions of the law are very clear where timeline needs to be strictly followed. If the rectification application is not made within the time limit, I think so it would be difficult.
So I think if I'm not wrong, the time limit is more than 3 months, I think, for
6 months, I think so.
rectification.
It is
Yeah.
under 161, it is six
Yeah,
months.
yeah, it is more, and for I think arithmetical error, it is even more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Order only for penalty received, tax already reversed due to mismatch, ITC balance for order passed, whether we should file appeal and take use. I think we have covered it. So yes, we are done with the questions, and uh, I would
Before we
like.
go, Sridhar bhai, I would request each and everybody to put up a feedback onto this session
I've
because
already asked them to put your
yeah,
feedback in the chat box so that we can
I really
have it.
appreciate if everybody can put up so
Yes,
that
yes.
that
So
can be a
it is the hard work of everyone that helps to bring out such sessions, and that sessions are recorded, available on the YouTube channel also. So you guys can refer it as, because in a webinar you might not have cleared some part, but yes, repeat recording can definitely help. And by that way, we are just building a knowledge directory for everyone. So on this
I
note,
really appreciate Team ITBA and all three organizations coming towards every month, every week. There have been session plans. I compliment to you and your teams.
Thank you, sir. It is support of each one which is helping us to do the things. So on this note, I would like to thank our today's speaker, CA Yash Shah, who has taken the burning topic of amnesty and clarified multiple issues in light of legal and judicial provisions. Also, I have shared the email ID in the chat box. I will also write it in the YouTube description. And it's Yash at HNA Associate, right? HNA India.
HNAindia.com.
Yash@hnaindia.com. You mail on it requesting for PPT or FAQ, and it will be available to you. So not an issue. And I thank Yash and all the participants, as well as all the organization and the office bearers of all the associated organization to for joining into this webinar. Thank you. We are ending this webinar. Thank you, Yash.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.